There we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin for Breakfast, live from Berlin, as we almost always are. It's good to see everybody. We got quite a few viewers in, but not so many people saying good morning yet. I think that's a very nice way to start the show. So if you haven't yet, check out the chat and give me a little GM. Yeah. The big stories of the week are kind of obvious. We keep setting new all-time highs. That's the main attention of almost everybody. But there's some other little stories going on as well. Perhaps the hottest debate of the week has been whether or not we should call the smallest unit of a Bitcoin or a Satoshi, as most people do today. We're going to get back to that debate, but first of all, we're going to jump into the block clock or the time chain calendar, which we used to visit every week, but we haven't in the last three episodes. I want to reinstate that tradition. It's one of my favorites. The block clock is a really, really cool. No, sorry, I keep saying the block clock because that's right behind me, showing us that we're currently at 105,600 US dollars for a Bitcoin. Pretty close to an all-time high. But I think we touched 108,000 yesterday. Good morning, Frida. Good morning, Lug, and good morning, Kolben. It's great to see you all. Let's open up our time chain calendar. That's what I meant to share with you. It's the first time. Oh, hmm, let me just figure out what the optimal view is here. Does this work perhaps? Do you guys see most of the data on the time chain calendar there? I don't know if that's too small for you. Maybe I should do it like this instead. Yeah, I didn't know. That's better. That's better. All right. So in the time chain calendar, a really cool tool I recommend you check out, by the way. We can see that the current block count is 875,274 blocks since the Genesis block in January of 2009. We used to pay really close attention to this because we were counting down to the next halving, which happened in April of this year. Now we can start counting down to the next halving, although we are quite a few years away. I haven't actually looked at this data for a long time. It's kind of cool to jump back into it, but it is also a little bit overwhelming. It used to have a percentage showing like how many percentages it was left until the next halving, didn't it? Am I blind for this? Do you still see it? If you do, let me know. I don't see it actually. All right. Well, anyways, we are in the fifth epoch, which means we're currently getting 3.125 Bitcoin per block being created. That goes down by half for every epoch. We're still 3.5 years away from the sixth epoch. Most of the supply has been mined. For those of you who are not aware of that, even more has been lost than what you see as an open supply here. Maybe 17 million Bitcoin or so going around right now. And that's about what I think I want to look at. I need to go back into this data again before I present it on the show. Let's move on to the markets. We are more comfortable in that space. Good morning, Roy, Daniel. Good to see you. Let's jump into the markets. Everybody's been paying attention to the Bitcoin price, of course. 103,000, going down a little bit from all-time high right now, but keeping above 100,000 euros. The curious thing about 100,000 euros is, of course, that it's a big psychological barrier, and there is no known price uh, that is where demand peaks out for Bitcoin after this. I mean, to be fair, there wasn't really any known price after $76,000 either. But if you look at the gold price of Bitcoin, you will see that the real all-time high, when you kind of adjust for inflation using gold, really happened here at 100K. And so passing 100K is where we enter what we know as price discovery. Um, Speculations go everywhere from 250,000 to a million in this cycle, but who knows? Each cycle tends to be a bit of a surprise. Very few people thought we would top out the last cycle at 74,000. Could be the inverse this time. Maybe we go far higher than what most people expect. But anyways, after this point, we don't know. It is open, clear blue skies with zero resistance. So I would expect us to spend maybe a little bit of time here at 100,000, just getting our footing, shaking out the weakest hands, and then we are off to a brighter sky. I am Norwegian, and this show is primarily watched by Norwegians, even though I try to do it in English because most Norwegians are excellent in English, and English provides us with a bigger community, people we can talk to from all over the world who may know more than just our Norwegian space. But so let's have a quick look at the Norwegian kroner as well, because for those of you who don't know, Norway is facing a series of big challenges. Elon Musk has even been vocal about some of them, like our media manipulation. But perhaps the most structural issue that most people are paying attention to these days is the development of the Norwegian kroner, which has been on a downward trajectory ever since the financial crisis in 2008. So this is not a new trend. But over the last couple of years, it looks to sort of be pushing towards some floor, and below there's no known bottom for the Norwegian kroner. And honestly, there is absolutely nothing going on that would suggest that this trend would reverse. Productivity is down. The Norwegian central bank keeps selling our currency um, to acquire foreign reserves, and with the kroner this low, Norwegian's purchasing power abroad significantly reduced, and I don't see this currency surviving very, very long. Obviously, it's not going to die next week, and there are so many things the government can do to defend it for a while. And most importantly, of course, as long as the government demands us to pay taxes in the Norwegian kroner, there will be a certain demand for the Norwegian kroner. But how long will people continue to put their trust in a currency that is so consistently and conspicuously losing its value over time? Um, that doesn't seem to have a very bright future for me. The euro fares slightly better, but not much. And it is part of the milkshake theory that as Bitcoin reaches these heights, as uncertainty increases in global markets, people will seek the safe havens. And right now, there are kind of two of them. First, you would have to go to the USD, especially if you don't have access to BTC for whatever legal or accounting reasons that are in your investment firm or your personal portfolio. Value will accrue to the USD and then to Bitcoin, and that is kind of what we're seeing. That the Norwegian kroner, euro, everything else is being sucked into the dollar, and the dollar is being sucked into Bitcoin over time. Anyways, this still means that at the moment you can get 85 satoshis for one Norwegian kroner. It's just a few weeks ago that we had Norwegian kroner satoshi parity. That means one satoshi equaled one øre, which is the smallest unit of a Norwegian kroner. going to get back to this issue with smallest units in a moment. But you can still get 85 satoshis for a kroner if and when Bitcoin reaches, say, a million US dollars, then you will also only get 10 kroners for, no, 10, sorry, 10 satoshis for one Norwegian kroner. So you can currently get 8.5 times that for 1 kroner. So if you have some kroners lying around or some USD lying around, this is a good time to, as good time as any. There's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin and hodl. Um, but yeah, good deal still going on there. Let's see, what other numbers can we pay attention to? Could mention that Ethereum continues to die with a whimper and not a bang. We expected, I think, for years that Ethereum would blow up in a spectacular unwinding of unknown proportions, and instead it's sort of just slowly fading away. The air is just popping out, long since gone out of the balloon. Ever since they introduced proof of stake, I think the last narrative that they could push was gone, and now it is just a matter of investors realizing this and jumping ship to Bitcoin. And that realization doesn't seem to be evenly distributed, but it seems to be an exponential trend here. And I don't expect we will hear or see much from Ethereum ever again, which is kind of satisfying for those of us who have felt distracted by Ethereum for several cycles. Um, it's nice that we can finally focus on the real narrative here, the real change that's happening, giving the world fair and open money that can transform our interactions. So yeah, let's see. Anything else to pick up on in the numbers today? If you have some comments, please leave them. I could mention Bitcoin dominance as well, sort of having this massive hammer candle here, suggesting that any dip down into altcoin season, as they call it, was a very, very fake one, and that our trend towards a higher Bitcoin dominance will continue imminently, which makes total sense. Of course, if you expect Bitcoin to now have a big jump, let's say to 250, which is a pretty small jump, I think, given the time Bitcoin has had to charge up for this one. At 250, Bitcoin's dominance necessarily, I mean, that amount of value is not going to flow to any of the other altcoins or scams going on out there. So that's just going to pump Bitcoin's dominance significantly, I think. All right, I'm done looking at this. No, for Christ's sake, don't see the charts. No, no. I'm going to change the tab so you see the chart. And I will just quickly run through the charts again. I won't repeat everything I said because here you have the Bitcoin dominance chart as I pointed to. You have this hammer candle suggesting that there's going to be upwards pressure in the Bitcoin dominance, which makes total sense looking at Bitcoin, which is once again at a new all-time high and a small jump up to, for example, 250, which would, looking at the historical development, not be the top of this bull run, most likely, although who is to say. We look at the gold price for Bitcoin, which is at the actual all-time high. We have passed that, and we are currently finding our footing on top of that support. And I expect, again, gold especially to be demonetized throughout this cycle, meaning a lot of value that could have accrued to gold will probably go to Bitcoin instead. Maybe we will even see a reverse trend of people selling gold to get into to Bitcoin, which we have seen sporadic evidence of in the past. Norwegian kroner crashing, dying, going fast this morning actually, down another percentage or two since trading started. The euro doing slightly better, but also very unstable against the dollar. Ethereum dying with a whimper and not a bang. Here we introduced proof of stake in September 2022, and since then it has just been a slow death for the biggest scam in crypto. Can still get 85 satoshis per Norwegian kroner, but that is falling fast, and I would recommend you convert whatever kroners you have to Bitcoin as soon as you possibly can. And I think that was the numbers that I covered. If you have comments or if you have other things you would like me to look at, maybe give me a wink in the chat. All right, cool. Everyone feels better informed? If so, I'm going to move on to the little debate that's been going on this week. Actually, no. You know what we're going to do? First, we're going to talk about Europe, because Europe has seemed hopeless for a while. Overregulation by EU bureaucrats who are very out of touch with what's going on the ground. An enormous amount of path dependency, right? We've been on this since the Cold War ended, since the fall of the wall. That dream of ending history and uniting Europe in some kind of political union that could put our past behind us and create some kind of united, powerful front against the world. That time has kind of ended, but the paths we have created to get us there are very much present, and they keep sort of forcing people's minds and political options and even yeah, what they can imagine to be done into a very narrow space, which leads us to constantly respond to everything with more regulation, more taxes, a more odious environment for entrepreneurship and innovation. And unsurprisingly, America is running away with most of the productivity gains in this century, while Europe is left behind. However, there are some positive signs recently. Only yesterday, we had two politicians bring up Bitcoin in their respective parliaments. One in the German Bundestag. I didn't find that clip right away, so you're gonna have to find that later on. But there was a German MP, I think he's the former finance minister actually, who stood up and said that Germany needs to look into the possibilities with Bitcoin. This is only months after Germany sold 55,000 Bitcoins that it had in their custody, which they were legally required by their own laws to do. But these are the kind of laws that obviously need to change if a country like Germany is going to have a future. And now some MPs are openly voicing the need for this. Perhaps more attention was given to the Spanish, I think, no, French, I am sorry, to the French MEP Sarah Knafo, who held a brief speech in the European Parliament, which I will play for you in full, because it's 2 minutes long. And here's what she had to say. I'm just going to make sure that the audio is shared and that we're not, I'm going to start playing it. If there's no audio, you're going to have to let me know in the chat. All right. Here is the French MEP on Bitcoin. And
on regulating, taxing, and holding back. It's time to change the paradigm. It's time to protect our people from inflation and the poor economic choice. 3 years ago,
now there
across
should be
the
audio.
Atlantic, the president of El Salvador decided
Still
to
no
invest in Bitcoins for his country. At the time, he was ridiculed by the political class and the IMF. He now shows a 100%
There are
return,
subtitles
with hundreds of
on the
millions
screen.
of dollars available for his people, for security, and for the sovereignty of his country. The whole world is now getting ready to take advantage of this revolution in decentralized finance. Donald Trump is going to create a strategic reserve of Bitcoin for the United States. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the US Federal Reserve, is now talking about digital gold. Bitcoin is skyrocketing. And what about the European Union? What is the European Union doing? It's squandering our money on unbelievable waste. It continues to accumulate tragically inflationary deficits. It insists on regulating, taxing, and holding back. It's time to change the paradigm. It's time to protect our people from inflation and the poor economic choices of our states. It's time to say no to the totalitarian temptations of the European Central Bank, which wants to impose a fully controlled digital euro. We don't want this dystopian world where a European bureaucrat could tomorrow ban us from certain transactions and even kick us out of the banking system with a click, just for something we said on social media or for an opinion that doesn't sit well. It's time to bet on freedom. It's time for our states to invest in Bitcoin to build national strategic reserves. It's time to develop the mining industry. We, the French, hold the cards with our nuclear advantage. Let's stop taxing cryptocurrency holders more and more. It's their intelligence, their risks, their sleepless nights that have built their savings. Let's allow them to protect themselves from the crazy spiral you've created. Public deficit that drives money creation, which creates inflation, leading to chaos. Let's dare to be free. Let's stop being afraid of our own shadow. Let's stay true to the ambition of our civilization. Thank you.
Yeah, so pretty cool, I think. First of all, really good speech. It shows intelligence and awareness of what's really going on, pointing even to France's nuclear energy position, which is very strong in Europe thanks to Germany's denuclearization over the last couple of years. It's for Norwegians, who again are the majority of my viewers. This debate is familiar. I think we come from a country with abundance amounts of green energy. A lot of it is stranded due to large distances within our country. In the south, you will find really high energy prices because we're connected to the energy net in Europe, and so there's much higher demand for the energy produced there. Whereas in the north, which has more abundant energy than in the south, there are fewer consumers, and it doesn't make sense to send it all the way down to the south because of the energy loss if you build cables there. So you have lots of energy that could be utilized, especially in off periods. And attempts to establish a mining industry in Norway to use this has been occasionally successful, but more limited than they should have been because of government hostility, local hostility, and an uncertain regulatory environment. Most recently, the current government ruling coalition is even debating a ban on Bitcoin mining in Norway. We don't have any MPs in Norway yet standing up and pointing to the fact that we should be exploring the opportunities of Bitcoin, which is remarkable given that we have major world leaders, even the leader of the most powerful nation on earth, who runs the current global monetary system, when even they are moving so clearly and rapidly in the direction of a Bitcoin strategic reserve, for example. It is almost absurd to look at our countries just sit there with their hands under their butt and not seeming even interested in considering these possibilities before it's way too late. We treat it as if though this is something we can consider again in 5 years or 10 years. But obviously game theory implies that if the US really does go for a Bitcoin strategic reserve in January, every other country on earth will be in a race against the US to acquire Bitcoin as quickly as possible. And they will not have 5 years to deliberate over whether they should do this or not. Now, I'm going to move on to a connected point here, which is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. I'm going to try to remember to share the tab this time. Here is a live ticker showing the value of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund dropping rapidly this morning, despite the Norwegian kroner's loss of value. Normally, when the Norwegian kroner goes down, the fund's value goes up because it is mostly divested into stocks and real estate around the world. So obviously devaluing the Norwegian kroner increases the fund's nominal value, which is part of the trick, I think. You wonder why the Norwegian government would allow the Norwegian kroner to go so low and continue to devalue so quickly. And one of the reasons could quite simply be that in Norway, the government can spend 3% of, I think, the profit of the fund every year, and obviously that profit is nominally much higher if you devalue the kroner. So even though you can't spend more than a certain percentage, what that percentage is goes much higher normally if you devalue the kroner. So the government has a very strong incentive to devalue the kroner to finance itself without the population revolting or criticizing its use of money, because it's not, and they aren't breaking any rules. They are following all the rules, right? So normally going down or a little bit up now, but a little back and forth. But one thing that is very clear is that if you denominated this fund in Bitcoin, you would have seen a very different kind of development over the last couple of years. We're not going to be as unfair as to introduce the first few years of Bitcoin in that data set, because that would have been an irresponsible investment at that time. But at this point, it's starting to look extremely irresponsible to not have any of the money that's meant to be saved for future generations, as they literally say on their front page here, invested in the future monetary system. There is an attitude that the risk is to be invested, when the reality is that the risk is to be completely divested from Bitcoin, which the fund currently is. So if you think about Bitcoin having gone up 5x over the last 5x over the last year, that means, of course, that the value of this fund in Bitcoin terms has also gone down 5x in Bitcoin terms. And this is a trend that will only continue until the fund is worth nothing in Bitcoin terms, unless we face this reality sooner rather than later, which is what this MEP and MP in the German parliament is trying to get at, I think. All right, I'm going to move on from this by playing you a little song. It's another classic from the last bull run, and this time it's a reminder of how to get rich on Bitcoin. It's to keep your time preference low. That means there's no reason to spend all your money today, basically, and not spend it on cheap shit you don't really want. Here is My Time Preference is Low by Matt Hoddle, and we'll be right back to discuss Sats the Standard after this little break.
I think I'll take it down the line, 'cause hard time is just a synonym for failure by design. We eat and drink our fill until we're satisfied, but are we fulfilled or only gratified? I think I'd like to wait this time, 'cause quality is fading when you squeeze out every dime. Easy money traps are set round center stage, laying art to rest inside a shallow grave, a shallow grave. Consumerism's got a vice grip on you. You're buying all this garbage and you don't have a clue. That easy money's got this whole world confused. So take your high time shit and go, 'cause my time preference is low. My time preference is low. Oh, 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 oh. It took me 30 years to find Da Vinci's ghost, watered down, destroyed by fiat crimes. And Atlas shrugs over Christmas trees, or butt plugs in the Paris breeze, Vans black and the Chicago beat. Consumerism's got a vice grip on you. You're buying all this garbage and you don't have a clue. That easy money's got this whole world confused. So take your high time shit and go, 'cause my time preference is low. Oh, and I can't tell the difference between art and some trash. It's time for hard money to kick you out on your ass. I take a little time to clean and polish up your rhymes and find a craft that you love to redefine. Consumerism's got a vice grip on you. You're buying all this garbage and you don't have a clue. That easy money's got this whole world confused. So take your high time shit and go, 'cause my time preference is low. My time preference is low. Oh, 'cause all this easy money's got this whole world confused. So take your high time shit and go, 'cause my time preference is low.
All right, so that was My Time Preference is Low by Matt Hoddle. Not a very famous artist, and I've only seen him produce these two great songs about Bitcoin in the last cycle. But I recommend checking him out on YouTube if you haven't already. I actually do want to just talk briefly about this with low time preference, because we often talk about it as a personal issue, and it is, of course. I mean, you are driven by the mechanisms of fiat, especially inflation, to make choices that you otherwise wouldn't have, and especially consumerist choices. You are driven to not hold on to your money. There's no point in the savings, so you might as well spend it on whatever trash floats your way. And since money is more abundant than things, it doesn't take much quality or time to produce something that will acquire you money. So the quality of items and the price that they are willing to are able to charge for them goes through the roof, and that has detrimental effects on your choices. But it also has detrimental effects on society, because price signals is one of the most important ways we can inform ourselves about the world around us without having to talk to every individual on earth. Every time you make a purchase, if price signals are honest and not manipulated, if the energy that flows from that decision is not somehow corrupted by taxes or regulations or rules, or in this case, inflation, then you and everybody else are able to make more honest decisions. Now, obviously, some price signals are not comfortable. They're the kind of price signals that people would say, this is not socially desirable. We want people to find this attractive because it's cheap, so let's subsidize it. Or we want to people to stay away from this, so let's tax it, so that the price signal gets disturbed. But in making that compromise with reality, No. Okay, I'm using a new studio. Well, not a new studio. I'm using the old studio, but it has a lot of changes, and it keeps disabling this audio or that audio without me being fully aware of it. Did you hear anything of what I just said since we went to since we finished the song? Have I been talking into nothingness? Because that was a long speech. Um, did you hear what I said about low time preference? Was there a sound when we talked about low time preference? I am okay. 2 minutes after. Okay, so we did. So maybe you caught a bit of what I said about low time preference, that it's not just a personal issue of changing your habits away from consumerist habits, but it's also a societal issue. We need more honest price signals so that people can orient themselves in a world that currently is just filled with lies and makes the whole world confused by easy money. That was the core of my little chat about the song we just heard. And now I moved on to the biggest and hottest debate of the week, which is SATS the Standard, a proposal by John Carvalho, one of the OG Bitcoiners, who has proposed a Bitcoin improvement proposal. This is how we change Bitcoin through consensus. And his proposal is that we change the unit, the base denomination of Bitcoin. Currently, most people will say that there are 21 million Bitcoin. I say that there are 21 million Bitcoin. If you look at my, uh, yeah, if you look at my shirt, you see here I got the meme of Knut Swanholm's book, everything, infinity, everything divided by 21 million Bitcoin. I tattooed the equation that shows why we will have 21 million Bitcoin on one wrist and the meme of everything divided by 21 million on the other wrist. So for me, it's kind of important that there are 21 million Bitcoin. However, our dear John Carvalho doesn't agree with this. He thinks that separating between Satoshis and Bitcoin, Satoshis being the smallest unit of a Bitcoin, there are 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin, the way we currently think about it. He thinks this is too confusing, and the argument has been made for a while, but um, he thinks we should instead just refer to Satoshis as Bitcoin. So remove Bitcoin as this higher value consisting of Satoshis and simply say that all the 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis that exist or will be in existence, that each of them should be just called a Bitcoin. So if you have 20,000 Satoshis, you have 20,000 Bitcoins instead. Um, Meaning there is only one denomination, and the argument for that simplicity is quite obvious. One is, on top of that, is that we inside of our Bitcoin bubble may think of Satoshis as extremely established, and that's something that everybody knows and understands. But outside Bitcoin, maybe that's not the case. However, I gotta say, over the last 10 years of talking about Bitcoin with people, and maybe the last 7 really talking about internally. What the hell? I am so tired of this. The sound falling out all the time makes it impossible for me to do a streamlined broadcast. I'm really sorry for you guys who are listening because it must be really, really annoying. Um, I was just saying that SATs, I've never had problems explaining it to people. It takes about 30 seconds before they get the analogy of cents to the dollar, sats to the Bitcoin. Of course, there's a big difference that there is 100 million Satoshis to a Bitcoin. But one thing that people do know, and you've even seen it referenced plenty of times in mainstream media, is that there are 21 million Bitcoin. one of the few anchored pieces of knowledge about Bitcoin. Okay, we have reconnected completely. Let's see if that helps. So yeah, I'll be cautious about changing Satoshis to Bitcoin as the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. Mostly because we have already anchored the value proposition so strongly on the idea that there are 21 million Bitcoin. Now, with that said, I think you also made some interesting comments about what a BIP really is. I recommend checking out John Cavallo, Bitcoin Error Log, at Bitcoin Error Log, on Twitter to learn more about BIPs and how they really work. There is no secret council deciding this. It won't be a Bitcoin law. It is not something that is going to be decided by shadowy supercoders. And just because there is a BIP doesn't mean it will become adopted. It needs to gain traction and then reach consensus, which I think will be difficult on this particular topic. But in this particular topic, industry players have more power than usual because they can simply change the domination in their apps. If people see that all their apps refer to Satoshis at Bitcoin, probably won't take long before they get used to that. So industry players are more important than usual in this debate. But I personally think it would be a bad idea to change to Bitcoins. No, I don't think there will. He wants any. I mean, he often makes the point that there are no microsats. That sats really are the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. So I don't think he wants to have any decimals at all. I think he just wants to say there are 2.1 quadrillion Bitcoins. This is very simple. I mean, I will grant him that it's very, very simple. It's just it's not knowledge. It's not anchored in the current knowledge that people have, and I think it would be. I find it more effective to say 21 million. I mean, even if this wasn't common knowledge already, I think 21 million is far easier for people to grasp than 2.1 quadrillion. Like you'd have to Google how many numbers that involves before you really get the number anyway. All right. This broadcast has been choppy due to a microphone that keeps connecting and disconnecting. I thank you for your patience and apologize for the issues. If there are any questions or comments before we end this show, let me know in the chat right now. If you appreciated the show despite the technical issues, scan the little QR code you see in the top left corner to bring you to a website where you can choose to send me a little tip, which is much appreciated. Every sat is holy, every sat is sacred. And beyond that, I hope to be back as soon as possible, hopefully next Wednesday. That's not Christmas Eve, is it? Am I promising you to be live on Christmas Eve? Because that's not going to work. Oh, that's Christmas Day. Maybe we will. That would be a nice way to have a Christmas Day, although probably none of you will be available to watch it since you'll be with your families, I hope. All right, that's it from me. Ho, ho, hodl. As always, take care of the people around you and yourself, and I'll see you again for the next broadcast. And next broadcast, we will have this equipment sorted out, so we won't have this issue again. Take care and see you soon.
For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. We have had our failures, but so have others, even if they do not admit them. To be sure, we are behind, and will be behind for some time. But we do not intend to stay behind, and in this decade we shall make up and move ahead. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. The great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.